What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton, the most experienced man on the grid, is having one of the most important weekends of his career, and almost no one saw it coming? Amid a media storm following his controversial disqualification in China, Hamilton has re-emerged in Japan with a performance that speaks not only of talent, but of adaptation, resilience, and quiet leadership. But why is no one talking about the true impact of his arrival at Ferrari? And what's happening behind the scenes after the Shanghai grid scandal? Stay tuned, because in this video we'll break down every detail, from his performance at Suzuka to the new clues surrounding his controversial disqualification. What's happening with Lewis Hamilton this weekend in Japan isn't just a good result on a timesheet. It's much deeper, much more revealing, and above all, it's a clear sign that the seven-time world champion is feeling comfortable again, not just in the cockpit, but within the Ferrari project. In a season where every detail counts, the fact that Hamilton managed to place fourth in both free practice sessions at Suzuka, and do so consistently, has implications that not everyone is clearly seeing. Let's first talk about the technical context. Suzuka is one of the most demanding circuits on the calendar. It's unforgiving of mistakes, punishes poorly planned setups, and rewards the driver who manages to find the balance between speed, precision, and courage. It's a track that, throughout history, has been the stage where the most balanced cars are revealed, and also where the shortcomings of those that have not yet reached their optimal point of development are noted. And there, in such a brutally honest environment, Hamilton managed to stand out. In the first session, FP1, Lewis wasn't just consistent. He was intelligent. He placed himself behind his teammate Charles Leclerc, which indicates that the SF25's performance wasn't unbalanced between drivers. But what's truly significant is that he achieved fourth place without forcing the car, without making mistakes, and more importantly, by gathering crucial information about the car's behavior in the high-speed corners of the first half of the circuit, especially in the SE section, where precise setup makes all the difference. Friday at Suzuka isn't just a day to check positions. It's the time when teams test different aerodynamic configurations, downforce levels, engine maps, and above all, simulate the conditions they will face in both qualifying and the race. Hamilton's finishing in the same position in both sessions isn't a matter of chance or luck. It speaks of consistency. And if there's one thing Ferrari has been striving for since the start of the 2025 season, it's precisely that: consistency and reliability. FP2 was another test, but of a completely different nature. Chaotic, disorderly, interrupted multiple times by red flags, 4 in total, and marked by accidents that will seriously affect track time. Under those conditions, any mistake, any loss of focus, can condemn you to the back of the grid. And yet, Hamilton reappeared at the top of the leaderboard, remaining fourth, this time with a very interesting additional statistic. He was the only driver in the top 5 who hadn't benefited from a cleaner track at the end of the session. In other words, his fastest lap came at a time of less than optimal conditions, suggesting there's still real room for improvement in his performance. But beyond the hard data, we must look at the feel. Hamilton has begun to talk about his comfort with the car. And that's pure gold for Ferrari. In his post-FP2 comments, he spoke of how he's recording everything in the cockpit and the settings, and how weekend after weekend, he feels more integrated into the environment. That's not just a superficial comment. We're talking about a driver who spent more than a decade with Mercedes, shaping every aspect of his car, from the setup to his feelings with the engineers. Changing teams means restarting that process. What we're seeing today at Suzuka is a clear sign that this process is no longer in its infancy. It's evolving. Hamilton is beginning to transform the SF25 into a machine he understands, feels, and can mold to his style. And when that happens, when a driver of his caliber begins to understand how and when to use every tool in the car, that's when he becomes a real threat to everyone else. And let's not forget a factor that, although intangible, outweighs any technical improvement: motivation. Hamilton came to Ferrari knowing the challenge was monumental, that the team wasn't at its best, that the car was competitive but not dominant. And yet he chose it. Because, as he himself has said, he wants to end his career on a high note. Not as a passenger from the past, but as someone who continues to write history. And in Japan, with every lap he completes, he's proving that his pen is still firmly in place. What happened at the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix was much more than a technical disqualification. It was a strategic, organizational, and communication collapse by Ferrari at one of the most delicate moments of the season's start. When the FIA announced the disqualification of both red cars, Charles Leclerc's for being underweight and Lewis Hamilton's for excessive wear on the floorboards under the car, the entire paddock assumed, almost automatically, that it was a basic error, an unthinkable blunder for a top-level team. But new evidence has come to light that completely changed the script. Hamilton's penalty focused on a very specific technical element, the sliding block or plank, located on the underbody of the car. This part is designed to control the car's minimum height from the ground. If a car is too low, the plank wear will be excessive, and that's precisely what was measured on the number 44 Ferrari after the race. The regulation is clear, a minimum thickness of 9 millimeters. Hamilton's car measured 8.6 millimeters on the left, 8.6 millimeters in the center, and 8.5 millimeters on the right. Case closed, apparently. But now we know it wasn't simply a matter of aggressive driving or poorly planned track strategy. According to internal reports and emerging technical analysis from within the paddock, the real problem had much deeper roots. Ferrari, during pre-season, failed to complete a full race simulation with Hamilton in Bahrain. The reason? Specific technical issues with its power unit limited the Britain's track time. The result? Fundamental data on the SF25's behavior during long runs and real-life race conditions was missing. This meant Ferrari arrived at the Chinese Grand Prix without a complete picture of how the car would perform under Hamilton over a full race. That gap in data combined with a second critical factor: the setup changes made between the sprint race and the main race. A seemingly minor alteration to the suspension height, possibly intended to maximize qualifying performance or adapt the car to track conditions, ended up causing more aggressive behavior in terms of chassis rebound and compression. The result? The car ran lower than planned, especially in the faster sections of the circuit, which led to unusual wear on the plank. This is where the responsibility begins to shift, not to the driver but to the technical structure. Ferrari simply failed to anticipate the consequences of its own decisions, and that's what really raises alarm bells. Because this isn't a one-off error, but rather a systemic failure in information management and decision-making. Hamilton, for his part, didn't commit any excesses behind the wheel. His driving was precise, within the limits, and even strategic. He had met the team's objectives, scoring important points after an inconsistent start to the season. But all that effort was undone by a string of technical and operational errors that reflect a worrying disconnect within the team. Furthermore, the way Ferrari handled the situation publicly was disconcerting, to say the least. They admitted the infraction without offering a compelling technical defense, without context. But we now know, from sources close to the team and from external analysis, that this decision may have been based more on the need to contain the media scandal than on the pursuit of sporting justice. They didn't appeal, didn't question the measurements, when in fact there were valid arguments to explain the origin of the problem. And the most frustrating thing for Hamilton fans is that this disqualification came on the heels of one of his most promising moments with Ferrari. He had just taken pole in the sprint race and won it convincingly, proving that, when the car is working, he still has the ability to be the fastest on track. The image of Hamilton lifting the sprint trophy, only to be removed from the main results hours later due to a failure beyond his control, is the clearest reflection of how a team can stifle the momentum of its star driver. This episode not only damages Ferrari's technical reputation, but also threatens to undermine Hamilton's confidence in the project. Because you can't build a solid season on such fundamental errors. And in a Formula One where the margins are increasingly narrow, losing a result like this isn't just an anecdote. It's an opportunity that won't come back. In conclusion, no, it wasn't Hamilton's fault. It was the fault of a system that, once again, proved incapable of protecting and nurturing the talent at its disposal. And while he continues to demonstrate on the track that he can still compete at the highest level, Ferrari has an urgent responsibility to finally live up to his expectations. And so, we come to the crux of this whole story. What is happening with Lewis Hamilton at the start of the 2025 season is not simply the development of a driver with a new team. It's the culmination of one of the most intense transformation processes we've seen in recent years in Formula One. And what's happening this weekend in Japan is compelling proof that Hamilton isn't at Ferrari just to complete his career, far from it. He's there to lead, to transform, and above all, to win. At Suzuka, Hamilton is beginning to show clear signs of having passed the point of adaptation. His performance, his consistency on the track, his body language, even his public statements all point to real, tangible progress. He's beginning to understand how the car works, how to work with the Maranello engineers, and how to extract real performance in highly demanding scenarios. This isn't just about placing fourth in 2 consecutive sessions. It's about doing it on a technical, demanding circuit, under chaotic conditions, and remaining competitive without relying on outside errors or random circumstances. But beyond the technical level, what's at stake here is the narrative. The story being written around Hamilton at Ferrari goes far beyond the results of a specific weekend. Because while the Briton works meticulously to build something lasting, his team seems to be playing with fire. The China scandal was more than a penalty. It was a wake-up call that highlighted Ferrari's structural problems, not only technically, but also in the way it communicates and handles crises. And here's something that can't be ignored. If Ferrari doesn't start correcting its internal errors, protecting its star driver, and making decisions with a long-term vision, it will be squandering what could be its best chance in years to return to the top. Because Hamilton is delivering. In pace, in professionalism, in leadership. But he needs a team that's up to his standards. Not one that exposes him to basic technical failures or allows his public image to be distorted by errors in the media narrative. Therefore, the ultimate question we should all ask ourselves isn't whether Hamilton is up to Ferrari's standards. That's already been answered. The real question is whether Ferrari will be able to match Hamilton's potential. Because if it doesn't, the problem won't be one of adaptation, performance, or age. It will simply be another chapter in the long list of missed opportunities for the Maranello team. So, if you enjoyed this analysis and want to follow every step of this story that's just beginning to unfold, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because what's happening now at Ferrari with Lewis Hamilton could be the beginning of a new era, or the prelude to another major disappointment.